Now I want to begin considering the objections that Dresser raises against what Dworkin argues. The first two objections are going to fall under the title in the article, Advanced Directives and Precedent Autonomy. And this can be found on page 344. And so there's actually going to be two objections that I want to draw your attention to that fall under this heading. So the first objection actually seems on the face of it as kind of appealing to just the practicality of what exactly would be involved in setting the kind of precedent that Dworkin has in mind. So let's just call this first objection. I'm going to call this objection the possibility objection. Now keep in mind that this is the label that I'm giving to the objection. Dresser doesn't actually use this label at all, but I'm going to try to explain the reason why I'm calling it the possibility objection. So the reason why I'm calling it the possibility problem or the possibility objection is because what Dresser does is ask, well, what exactly would be involved in this? What would be involved in setting the kind of precedents, the advanced directives that Dworkin thinks would be required for this view of autonomy? Right? So we might even ask if this is even really practical. Is it the sort of thing that we could really do? Maybe we should do more to promote people setting these sort of advanced directives, if possible. But it seems like there's a lot of changes that would be involved. It just may not be a practical thing that we could do to begin with. But we also might ask what would count as genuine understanding of the many complex issues that would be involved when one is setting this kind of a precedent. Right? So you might think that in order to really do a good job of setting the right precedent, you'd have to have a really sufficient understanding of the disease, of all the practical implications, of different aspects involving family members, and maybe in the future there's going to be some kind of a cure, and you're just not aware of that when you set the precedent. So what kind of understanding would be involved? And is that kind of understanding going to be a genuine understanding, or is it going to be insufficient to really count as the genuine kind of precedent that Dworkin thinks is required? And then once you have those two general kinds of questions in place, then we might also point out the fact that most people never actually set such precedents or advanced directives. Now again, it's one thing to say, well, we should do more to encourage people to set these kind of advanced directives. It's another thing to say that people that do have sufficient understanding, or that that the practical implications that are involved in setting the kind of advanced directives that would involve the right kind of understanding, that's even something that we could do in the first place. So those are different kind of ways of approaching this issue. And then there's the fact that dementia is different for everyone. And so it seems like the understanding you would need to have would be different for each person who is experiencing this ailment. And how would you know what form would this ailment take on for you if it hasn't really, if the progressiveness of that disease has not really gotten to the point yet when you're still competent in setting this precedent, this advanced directive. So dementia is different for everyone. And the fact that dementia is just a very different disease for everyone seems to suggest that there's not going to be any kind of a universal way to make sure that everyone has a genuine understanding of all of the different factors that are going to be involved, or all of the different implications that would be involved in trying to implement the advanced directives in such a way that it would allow for the precedent view of autonomy that Dworkin's after. Right? So, dementia is a progressive disease. And since dementia is such a progressive disease, we would presumably need a better understanding of the progressive features of dementia. And insofar as we would kind of need a better understanding of these progressive features of dementia, you might also think that the different people who are experiencing dementia, they're going to have different experiences at different stages. And so given that there's so many different features that are going to be involved, dementia is a progressive disease. We need a better understanding of the progressive features. And that suggests that dementia is going to be experienced in different ways by different people. We don't have a universal way of deciding whether or not somebody has a genuine understanding of everything that would be involved in order to set the kind of precedent that Dworkin thinks is required. Then that suggests that we need a better education. We need to do a better job of educating people with regard to all these different factors, because setting a precedent on bad information will result in a bad precedent. And if it's possible that we could set a bad precedent because we don't have the required education, we don't have the right kind of understanding, given that there's so many different features involved in the progressive nature of something like dementia, and so it just seems very, very likely that the precedent that would be set would be, for one reason or another, a bad precedent. Well, that seems to suggest that we would not be able to allow for cases of a change of heart. Or the kind of change of mind, the kind of deciding, no, this is not really what I wanted after all. So given all of these different features, what this seems to suggest, this first objection, what I've been calling the possibility problem, it's a possibility problem because there's just so many different factors and problems that might come up when we are setting the precedent. There's so many different ways in which it could go wrong that it's just not clear that setting the right kind of precedent is even possible. It's not clear how we would go about doing that, right? And it certainly wouldn't allow for the kind of change of heart that you think it might need to allow for, given that the precedent that's set could be one that's set on bad information or with an inadequate understanding of all the different features. And so what that tells us is that Dworkin's sort of absolute insistence upon respecting one's precedent, well, that might be rejected. We should reject this sort of absolute adherence to, respecting one's precedent. Because there's just so many different ways in which the precedent that's set, the advance directive that's stated, could go wrong in one way or another. And it may not allow for the right kind of change of heart that you think, intuitively we might think it should be required, given that there's just so many different ways in which the precedent could be a bad precedent. And so that's what I'm calling the possibility problem. It's a problem because it's just not clear that setting a genuine precedent is even possible in the first place. It's not clear what it would take for such a precedent to be set. We can't just simply respect whatever is written on some document, because really, in order for it to count as a genuine precedent, we need to have an adequate understanding of all these different features. And dementia is a progressive disease, and it's going to be different for different people at different stages. What people experience is going to vary drastically from one person to another. And so the information that people are using to set the precedent could result in a bad precedent. So that's the general problem, right? The first objection that Dresser is raising to Dworkin. Now the second objection is going to deal more specifically with the problem of personhood or personal identity. So now let's get into that objection.